So, the bridge to understanding. You've already had a couple of really great speakers this month. I'm going to take just a little bit different tack on this, and partly because I got called a little bit spontaneously, you might say, to do this. I'd originally thought of doing something based on Harry Potter, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I said, I'll have to save that for another day. But also, I have my metaphysical dictionary up here. If any of you would like to take a peek in it, I have the representatives of the month marked there if you care to read, more about that. There is an actual reason why those particular disciples and the women representatives were chosen for the particular month. So anyway, I don't always do this, but today I'm going to do it because there were so many definitions for the word bridge, and there were so many definitions for the word understanding. So the bridge term that I want to use is actually from the Navy, okay? Captain Kirk, and, well, I guess that wasn't the Navy really, but that was a very advanced Navy, the sea of the universe. But the bridge in the naval term is a platform. Now I'm going to stop at some of these words because I'm going to come back to them. A platform between ships, right? Ships take you places. For the officers, now that one, you might not quite be ready to think of yourself as an officer, but actually Charles Fillmore uses that word in terms of the office of our mind going out into our lives to create what he calls manifest reality. So that's what we're using it. And then to stand on and keep watch. Okay? That's pretty short, but there's a lot in that. The bridge is a platform between the ships that the officers stand on watch. Now here's the kicker. From which the vessel is commanded. Okay, we just came out of power and imagination, and we're going in to deep water, maybe, understanding. All right, also though, as a coda, you might say, there's a musical term, bridge, right? And those of us that are Beatles fans, they were amazing at having bridges like no one else had ever thought of before. In fact, there's a story, now I'm going to get off for a second, but there's a story that Mick Jagger spent all the rest of the money that he had to take a bus all the way to Liverpool to talk to John Lennon and Paul McCartney because they knew this key, that they knew a chord, that's what it was, and he had heard it in the bridge to one of their songs, and he really was so intrigued that he went all the way over there to see them. The musical term is, the bridge is a passage. Now here's some more emphasis from me, which joins two more important passages, but often involves a change of key. So if you want to take all of that and use it metaphysically, just do so at your own, whatever way you want to use it. Because for me, I think the bridge almost of understanding to understanding is what does join some of the powers that we've already studied this year and move into the ones that we're going toward. Now, understanding, even though a lot of the time when we talk about it, I think what we're really talking about is compassion. But understanding, as Unity teaches it, is based more from kind of what I was saying in the meditation. It's, I don't know, sometimes I think the intellect gets a bad rap. It's mind. It's intellect. It's from divine mind. And then what happens is, again, we bring it down into our heart center, which is what understanding allows us to do, and we're able to actually co-create with that power. That's what unity teaches. You know, and I don't know, sometimes I've been in some workshops where they say, how's that working for you? You know, I forgot my joke sign. I think of it as a point to go toward. Something I will probably never attain. But that's the direction that I'm going in. I want my thoughts to match my words, to match my actions, to match my spiritual heart beliefs. And, you know, that's a tall order. Especially for me, if I'm irritated about something, right? My first husband said, you know, I'm not even done making the sandwich and you put everything back in the fridge. I have made a lot of progress since then. I also had a therapist when I was in my 20s who said, Jeannine, you're really doing well. You don't think you're responsible for world hunger anymore. I could go on. My kids said I made them feel responsible for the genocide of the Native Americans. I mean, you know, it goes on and on. All right. So, just to say, Webster agrees with that as well, that empathy, tolerance, and compassion as a definition for understanding is only mentioned once. There's 6 other meanings for understanding that have more to do with mind. Seizing the meaning of, I would call that being illuminated or illumined. To become thoroughly acquainted with or to excel in the practice of. So, power and mastery. Emily Cady says, no one would try to become a master of music who did not spend time every day with music. And she is equating that to meditation and prayer. That if we want to attain a closer oneness with that power and presence, we practice. To form a reasoned judgment of, to me that's our power of wisdom and discernment. To interpret or to attribute meaning to, there's our imagination again. Creativity. To accept as a fact or believe in. Now that one's a little trickier, but I would say the power of will. And of course faith. And also, lastly, having the power to supply understanding is understanding, right? I understand that. I comprehend it. But the greatest of these, of course, is that one that's only mentioned once. Empathy, compassion, tolerance, love. So, I told everybody I was just going to get up and just tell jokes the whole time since it was picnic Sunday. Tom told me a good one. Having kids is just like a walk through the park. Jurassic Park. And now we get to say kids and grandkids, right? Okay, so I took a well-known phrase from Scripture. I'm pretty sure most everybody's heard it. And I'd like to use Unity's idea of making a practical application of an idea to something, okay? And I may not even get through this because I've got way too much material as usual. But the conclusion to 1 Corinthians 13, which is St. Paul's famous treatise on love, right? We all very familiar with it. The conclusion that he draws is, so, therefore, faith, hope, and love abide. But the greatest of these is love. So, what I'm going to do with understanding is I'm going to say, here's faith without understanding, in a sense. That's too simplistic, but that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Here's faith with divine understanding, okay? It's kind of the way they do, I don't know if you've ever looked at these cards up here, But Paul Hasselbeck kind of does that with the powers. If you ever want to take a peek at that, it's interesting. It says, and again, I would never diss our human nature. I love human nature. Not all the ways it manifests, but I love human nature. I don't think it's always about us rising above our human nature, right? I think Jesus really showed that we can glorify and manifest that amazing power right here, right now, in this body, right? So, but let's just say, for the sake of the talk, that faith is operating alone. It's operating only with the best that we might call it ego-clinging nature can come up with. So that's what they might call blind faith. This is where I might be trying to convince myself of some belief that's no longer working, or some connection to what Carolyn Mace calls a tribal idea. Someone has put upon me, and I have not examined it or re-examined it. So therefore, it's not taking me where faith could take me, right? Jesus says, and again, we don't want to offend anyone, but this is just the words he used. That kind of faith is like the blind leading the blind. They will fall into a ditch. Just literally. So, faith with understanding, on the other hand, becomes another power completely. We can navigate, there's my naval term, we can navigate it by use of the divine word and our connection with creative mind. As we stand on that bridge, we ask believing, and it is done onto us. This is the faith that Jesus was talking about when, in the Daily Word, it was talking about healing, right? Okay, so he's healing someone, and then he says, it's your faith that made you well. That's the kind of faith. Not just, oh, I hear there's a new teacher, I hear there's a new magician, oh, run, see if he'll do something for me. It's more like the woman who crawled through the crowd and just touched the bottom of his garment. He really was astounded by that faith. In fact, he said power had been flowing out of him. So he knew that. So that's faith. How about hope? When I have hope without the foundation of divine understanding, it's like wishful thinking. It's like a child whistling in the dark. It's even sometimes a form of denial, not the kind of denial that Unity teaches, but the kind of denial that psychology talks about that can lead to, well, illusion. And sometimes even something darker. It can lead to delusion, right? My spiritual advisor and I, one night after we had talked for a really long time, she says, well, we could hope in hope. And I like to think of it as a healthy hope. I have a healthy hope that tries to free others from unrealistic expectations. And I also sometimes put a caveat on my prayers. I say, God, you know this is a mother's prayer, right? Because it's pretty tough to pray, thy will be done, if it looks like the person is heading to destruction. That's really tough. So back to the way we teach in Unity to pray, we uphold the truth and the light for the situation regardless of how it looks. And I always have to say, and especially regardless how it feels. I'm kind of sensitive, you know? And I've learned to be less so in ways that are harmful to me or to others, but it's still just a part of who I really am. I'm sensitive physically, I'm sensitive to noise, I pick up other people's feelings a lot. I'm not always accurate, but a lot of the time I am. And that's not always a gift. Really, it's not. I love people that, you know, things just kind of go off them, you know, and I like to try to cultivate that, you know, to some extent. Anyway, so with divine understanding, the true nature of hope becomes linked with our will, where we accept what is. We accept the people around us the way they are. We accept ourselves the way we are. We accept the world and the conditions the way they are. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't be activists or write letters to people that are Congress people or what. It doesn't mean that. It just means that the place that I begin from, it's kind of like, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Just like that. So, time to wrap up with the greatest of all powers. Love without divine understanding can lead to self-seeking, can lead to immature perceptions of love. Say just a single-handed feeling of a career pursuit can leave us with materialism that does not feed us. How many big rock stars and other, really, really rich people say it didn't do what I thought it would do for me. Many end in some kind of tragedy in their lives. Or say our love for our cherished view of the world. That can be a real trap. Because what is happening out there, I think I can almost say guaranteed, is often not what it looks like. And it's yet to be seen. But as we know and we hear all the time, love for others is rooted in our love or lack of it for ourselves. Does anybody ever just tell you how to love yourself, though? I mean, here it is in 3 easy steps. Here's how you love yourself, right? Okay? Now you got that. Now you're going to be able to love others, right? And back to loving your enemies. That's the greatest yoga of all. That's spiritual calisthenics on a master's level. Because to really love our enemies is to say, there are no enemies. There is no enemy. And yet, to also say, something that really appears to be, for lack of another word, evil, I will stand up and say no to it. Now, those two things don't seem like they could go together, but they can. They can. Our gentleman over there, who's going to be 90 years old, he had an experience of that in World War II. And I honor that. It's a contradictory thinking, but it goes together. All right, so with understanding, love does become the greatest power. And we can seek to love others first, rather than to be loved. It is greater to understand rather than to be understood, as St. Francis said. And we point ourselves, as I said, toward that great ideal, to stand on the bridge and command what we do with our power, what we do with the center of ourselves, what we do with the Christ. That isn't some like fluffy thing. It's a power. So now you can just go to the picnic and have fun and say, oh, she gave such a lighthearted talk. Just some thoughts to contemplate as you go your way this week. May the power of understanding be the solid platform from which you navigate with true faith, hope, and love. Namaste.